All right, we are live and now I'm going to transfer ownership back to you.
Okay.
I think.
I also have the share screen turned on for you. Just confirming that. And
Perfect.
I've got hosting back. People are joining. Here's Joe. We'll check in with her real quick. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Jeff. I was going to see if I could do this on my little laptop just because it's a little bit bigger screen, but I don't know if it really matters.
Whatever works for you, I think is totally okay. We just want to check in with you real quick and see if you have any questions or anything, and then in just then we'll have you go dark briefly, and then in just a couple of minutes, I will welcome the audience. We may ask them to hold for a couple more minutes as people log in, and then we'll get started. Do you have any questions, John? Okay.
No, John and I talked this morning.
Great. Well, how about if you go ahead and go mute and dark for just a couple minutes, and then we'll be bringing you back on first after JT does his preliminaries. I've got 17 people in the waiting room, so it looks like
That's great.
most of the people that we are expecting have made it in. Just checking names to see who we might be missing. We're missing about 5 right now.
I would say if you've got 17, we should go ahead and begin.
Okay. So then I guess we let you go dark, and then I'll let everybody in and I'll welcome them.
Okay, I'm out.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to SANCA's first virtual town hall meeting. I'm Jeff DeVoe. I'm the development director for SANCA. And I just wanted to take a moment to personally thank all of you for your support and care for SANCA during the COVID pandemic. It really means a lot to all of us. And now I'd like to introduce you to SANCA's executive director, John Tenus. He joined us just a month before COVID started, so it's been quite a ride for him. And I'd really like to thank John for his leadership and all he's doing now to steer SANCA through this crisis. Welcome, John. I think you're still muted, John. Hold on a second. There.
There we go. Now you can hear me, correct? Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for the lovely intro and for getting us started. And welcome everybody to our virtual tent hall. So I wanted to begin by just telling you a little bit about what we're doing with this event and its purpose. This is really an opportunity to connect with our supporters of SANCA and give you a little bit of an idea of what we're up to. I think if we were not in the middle of a pandemic, we would probably be doing this in person, maybe with a little bit of Circus at SANCA's facility and some beverages and all of that. But since we can't connect in person right now, this is the way that we get to check in with you. So This is meant to be just a nice little community conversation amongst a group of us who want to learn a little bit about what SANCA is up to and give you all an opportunity to ask some questions. We're going to dive into a little bit of our updates on what SANCA is doing in the midst of COVID right now. We've sent out updates, throughout the spring and throughout a lot of the summer, but we want to give you as much of an update as to where we are today. And then I'm going to bring on some speakers from within our community to talk about 3 different topics. We're going to talk about COVID safety. We're going to talk about our diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in our DEI with our DEI team. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our facility, specifically looking at our flying trapeze tent and some upgrades that need to be made there to give you some idea of some of our trajectory moving forward through all of this. So I'm going to begin, and I've got a little bit of a presentation I'm going to start with. So bear with me just for a second while I get us on screen with that. So here we go. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about what we're doing right now in the midst of COVID. Obviously, this has been a very challenging year for everybody, also for SANCA. We've been doing our best to be as transparent in our communications as possible about updates throughout the spring and the summer. So you've heard a lot from us that we had received a PPP loan that helped us through a lot of the spring. And now that we are in the summer, we have had a chance to open, have summer camps, and have some limited classes in addition to the online classes that we're producing. The online classes have been a real boon. A lot of people have loved them, and there's a very strong indication that we will continue them because the demand will be there even beyond when we get past COVID, and hopefully that time comes fairly soon. But I think our online classes, at least at some level, are here to stay. We've had the opportunity to connect with people all over the world who have maybe attended SANCA in the past or are learning about SANCA for the first time. That's been a real treat. What you see on screen here is a little bit of our COVID safety approach. We have been about as diligent as we can in staying on top of the regulations that the governor's office has provided for us to follow. And we have the benefit of a really large space. As you see here, this is the main gym view from up above. You see some of our camp students and 2 of our coaches, Molly and Eric. And you see the markings on the floor that help the kids stay socially distant from one another. Our camps have been going really well. We've kept them limited to a maximum of 20 students at a time. And given the size of our facility and the separate rooms, as well as the flying trapeze tent, and using some outdoors as well and being creative like that, we've been able to keep everybody socially distant and safe and masks on. Here's a view of our South Annex where we're doing German wheel. And we have, again, lots of space for everybody to spread out and play a little bit, and everybody is largely wearing masks. We do have one small exception where masks are allowed to be removed within a certain area, and that has been received mostly positive. There definitely have been some concerns amongst people in the community, but for the most part, things have gone smoothly, and people are wearing their masks by and large. We're also really staying up on cleaning and sanitizing. Everybody who works out, both our coaches and our students, are cleaning equipment as they go. So as they finish their lesson or their class, they clean equipment before they move on to their next space. And here is just another breakdown of how we're communicating some of our health and safety policy to the community. Everybody who walks through the door, we have infrared thermometers to be able to take their temperature, and we ask them about any symptoms they might have. We have all of our large bay doors open throughout the facility, which provides great airflow through the space. And then we have gotten really phenomenal feedback from our community. I mean, it's in a way, it's been lovely and overwhelming. I'm going to let these people speak directly. You can read what's there on the screen, that we've heard from both parents of folks who have had students in our camps, and we have also heard from students who are attending classes themselves, just applauding what we do. And this particular parent says they won't take their kid to the store, but they're happy to bring to the grocery store, but they're happy to bring them to SANCA. That really means a lot to us. This one's a little bit longer. I'll give you a minute to read through it. But one of the things that that I really appreciated out of this message was this parent saying, "I feel you have gone above and beyond to create a safe environment for all occupants." And that means a lot to us, because SANCA's mission is about health. We say right in the beginning of our mission statement that we are about the mental, emotional, and physical health of our students through Circus. So as we are dealing with a pandemic, we want to do everything that we can to make sure that Circus is safe as possible. I'm going to move past this. I'm sorry if you haven't got all the way through this long text. Here's another one that gives us a little bit of pat on the back for our online Circus classes as well, which have been really engaging and fun. Our coaches did such a phenomenal job with coming up with new and creative ideas. We had Coach Manjeet come up with the kids' pajama party that were happening on Saturdays and Wednesdays that were really popular. We were able to teach juggling online. We did partner acro online. We did so many different classes, and we still have so many of them going that continue to get really great response. So the other thing I want to say at this point, before we get into introducing our speakers and starting today, is that I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of our supporters who have helped us through the last 5 months since we were shut down back in March and through our reopening. We've had such an incredible outpouring of support that is at levels we haven't seen historically in the past several years. So everybody has really stepped up. Specifically, I want to call out the many families and students who have given extra gifts of support this year. And then more than 30% of our enrolled families and individuals who were signed up for spring session, which got canceled entirely, more than 30% donated that tuition back to SANCA in full. And that included also some folks who had registered and paid for summer camps, but decided not to attend because of the pandemic, or that they could not attend because of the pandemic. And they donated that as well. So thanks to all of them, and thanks to everybody who has given. I also want to, by name, have a few of our major donors recognized. Obviously, we've had contributions from so many people, we could not put them all on the screen. We wanted to thank specifically these folks, and some for some different things. For instance, Security Federal Bank at the top there, they actually helped us secure our PPP loan from the Small Business Administration when our bank was not able to get us one. That was really crucial in helping SANCA make it through the spring this year. And I want to thank John Cornicello. I think all but one of the photos that I showed in our slide came from him, because he came in recently to take photos of our classes and our coaches, with both students and coaches wearing masks. Of course, we didn't have that, and we didn't feel comfortable doing any marketing for our programs without showing people wearing masks. And all of our photos from our past and our archives obviously do not have people wearing masks. So thank you, John Cornicello, for that. And thanks to everybody on this list who made cash contributions and really dug deep to help SANCA this year. Okay, just a note before I introduce our first guest, that we do want to have a bit of a conversation with you all. We think, though, because of the format, it'll be best for us to have you hold your questions towards the end. We are going to roll through, and I think we'll have about 40 to 45 minutes of programming and interviews. And then after that point, we will open up for Q&A. We'll ask you to either use the raise hand function, where you can sort of digitally raise your hand through Zoom, and then we will call on you to, Jeff will help unmute you, and you can turn on video if you want to, but you don't have to, and you can ask a question verbally. Alternatively, if you're not comfortable with that, you can ask a question in chat. And those questions can be for me or for any of our speakers. So if you can just hang on, listen through the presentation, and hold your questions for that time, then we'll have a little bit of a conversation with all of you. So I'm going to begin, and I'm going to come out of this slideshow. There we go. Just get back to where I am now in my notes. So I'm going to introduce to you someone who is really near and dear to the SANCA community. Many of you probably know, is one of the co-founders of SANCA and also a pediatric nurse practitioner at Seattle Children's Hospital. I want to introduce to the call Joe Montgomery. If we can get Joe in. Are you out there? There she is.
Hi.
How are you doing tonight?
I am well. How are you, John?
I'm very good. I'm glad you got the memo about the red shirt.
Yeah.
So you're one of our co-founders. You're also a nurse practitioner, as I mentioned. So I've actually, I've been calling you a lot and getting your advice on how we can handle things in the midst of this pandemic. I kind of want to start with a general question, which is it possible for us to do circus and to go to the gym safely during COVID? Or is the risk in general too great? What's your take on that?
I think that it's safe to go to this gym. I think it's safe to go to SANCA, and the difference between SANCA and, I don't know, 24-hour fitness is the air circulation and the ceiling height, and that SANCA is adhering so closely to the occupancy recommendations that our governor has set out, and wearing masks. So really, they're doing the things. There's good air circulation. There's protection from each other, if you will, from the masks, and keeping social distance. I went to SANCA over the weekend, and I was very impressed with just the extra space that's been made, and the arrows showing people how to circulate well so people aren't running into each other. It's really, you guys have done a great job. Great job.
Thank you for that. And I want to thank you for your advice through all of this, especially in the early stages of the pandemic when there were so many question marks. Your counsel really meant a lot.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
So as a co-founder of SANCA and sort of shifting gears a little bit, you're quite beloved for your role in helping create what is an amazing circus space for our community that people love. It has changed lives. I've had so many people in the 6 months, 7 months that I have been on the job come to me and tell me that SANCA has changed their life for the better. You had an initial vision when you started this thing. How well is SANCA meeting that vision now?
Thank you for asking. I would say well, but I'm going to talk more than that because that's what I'm like. From the beginning, we felt like there were 3 main goals, and one was to provide excellent coaching in circus arts education. 2 was to make that excellent education accessible to everybody, regardless of physical ability or experience, and also regardless of ability to pay. And I am beyond impressed that you are still providing a limited number of scholarships, even in these dire financial times for the world, because it means the world to somebody to be able to get out and feel good about something they've learned physically. And the third part was to create a welcoming space and community. And I'm really happy to see that continue, really happy. And that you guys now have the diversity and equity and inclusion group working on improving that aspect of our community is so important and makes me really happy. Yeah, so SANCA is still providing that excellent education, and it's still making that education accessible and working on community. And I want to thank you, John, because really you have done such a phenomenal job. It has been a pleasure working with you, and I think you're doing an awesome job and taking good care of SANCA. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. I've really enjoyed it, and I've been embraced by this community so warmly. This year has been, obviously such a different one for all of us. So it's been a very strange way to be integrated into this community, but I've been impressed by how welcoming everybody is. And then again, like I said, everybody comes to me and says, SANCA is magic. It has changed my life in one way or another. So I want to ask you a question a little bit off the top of my head in terms of where we're going with COVID overall. Do you see us here in King County getting back to a point where SANCA will be at full operation, say in the next 6 months, in a year? What's your perspective on that? I'm putting you a little on the spot with that question, I realize.
Sure, that's okay. And this is my personal opinion. I don't think it's going to be at full capacity in 6 months, because I don't think there's going to be a vaccine in 6 months. And I don't see how we can be in a crowded room without being worried about it until a certain percentage of the population has been vaccinated. Right? Or we've all had the illness, but even then we don't know how long the immunity lasts. So I don't know about 6 months, but maybe a year. And again, I just think SANCA's got such an edge because we have space and ceiling height and loading doors. And those seem kind of funny, but really they're crucial difference. And then also have just been really great about, cleaning hands, wearing masks, keeping far apart. Yeah.
Yeah, we've been really strict about our guidelines, and that has a lot to do with our very hardworking and diligent staff who have stayed on top of enforcing all of those policies.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you for being here, and I'd like to ask you to stick with us. I'm gonna bring on some other guests, but stick around on the call, and if we have questions from our supporters who are on the call later, specifically, they may want to ask you questions. Stick around for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate having you.
My pleasure.
So we're going to transition to our next topic, and we're staying pretty well on time, which is a good sign. We are going to talk a little bit about our DEI team, and DEI stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This team got started earlier this year, back right around in the springtime, March and April. And then, of course, with the George Floyd protests, things have become much more visible on a national and global scale. So I'm going to introduce a couple of members of that team to join us. You see on the screen right now wearing a fabulous shirt, Manjeet Golden, who is co-chair of the DEI team, and also Tara Adams, who is our board of directors representative on the DEI team. And I just want to also mention, I believe that she is on the call as well, is that the co-chair of the DEI team is Tanya Nambo Escobar. Welcome, Manjeet and Tara.
Hey, John.
Really great to have you. And Manjeet, I just have to say again, love that you have that t-shirt and that you're wearing that tonight. Very nice. So I want to ask you just a couple of questions about DEI and essentially SANCA and what that means for us. So I want to start with, in what ways can SANCA be an anti-racist organization? What specifically in terms of actions can we take that are appropriate to our mission and our position in the community?
Why don't I start out?
Yeah.
Before I get into the substance of it, I have an admission to make that when John initially asked me to speak about racism, I was slightly terrified. For most of us who aren't used to talking about race, it's a pretty uncomfortable topic. And I came to realize that that's really okay, because it's a conversation that we desperately need to be having. Racism has been a big part of life for far too many people for far too long. Fortunately, I think with recent events in our country, we're at a turning point, and clearly our world has had enough. Tolerating racism at any level just isn't an option anymore. So as leaders at SANCA, we think it's really essential for us to take a role in helping to eliminate racism. As leaders in, frankly, all of our organizations, we really do have the power to make a difference. We need to be open to learning. We need to be willing to admit that we've made mistakes. We will, in fact, make mistakes. We will say the wrong things from time to time. I'm guilty of that myself. Fortunately, people have been tolerant with me as I go along in learning as much as I can about racism and the current state of that. We have started the leadership at SANCA by trying to educate ourselves. Sadly, racism isn't something that we've left behind. It's all around us. It's in our organizations. It's in us as individuals. And I think we need to learn about that. We need to see it and acknowledge that. It's really the first step in addressing the issue. I think the first step that we as leadership want to take, after educating ourselves, of course, is to work on developing an action plan that we can use to address racism within the organization. Now, obviously, there are a myriad of issues that we need to deal with in the short term, as well as on a long-term basis. I think one of the components of that's going to be evaluating the organization and the structure, and finding ways to eliminate individual and systemic racism and to ensure equity within the organization. Just a few quick examples, just in the HR processes alone. We know we need to look at hiring and retention policies. We have to look at our classification and compensation plans, evaluation processes, et cetera, et cetera. It's not unusual, despite our attempts in human resources, to make things fair and equitable and to eliminate racism. It lurks there nonetheless. We also know that anti-racism training at all levels of our organization is going to be critical. I know a lot of organizations have done that in the past. We can't rely on training to end bias, but it's a start. We all need to learn. It needs to be a continuing process. We'll all need reminding, we'll all need reinforcement to make it a reality. We know that mentorship of BIPOC employees has to be an organizational priority. And whether that's preparing our employees for leadership roles within SANCA or in other organizations outside of SANCA, it's really critical to provide that kind of development opportunity. And by the way, for anybody who doesn't know what the acronym BIPOC stands for, please Google it. I had to do that myself a few months ago. It'll take you on an interesting learning journey. I came out of HR, and we have talked about diversity for years and years and years. But still, I think we all know that the norm continues to be that Black people are underrepresented at the board and leadership levels, whether it's a corporation, whether it's a public agency, or whether it's a nonprofit organization. We really need to expand beyond the traditional methods of searching for and vetting candidates, being far more inclusive in bringing people in. Need to recognize the importance of having a genuinely inclusive workplace for a number of different reasons, but the first one being that if we don't have an inclusive workplace, we're not going to be able to recruit a team that has diverse talents and perspectives. And without it, we won't be serving our community as effectively as we can. SANCA has formed the DEI committee, which John has already mentioned. They're just beginning their work. And what our hope is, they have a lot of new, fresh ideas. We're hoping that they will help guide us through the work that the rest of us need to do and support us in the work that we're hoping to accomplish, again, short-term and long-term. I think we all know that anti-racism is a journey. It's a lifelong project. We want all of you to know that we're very committed to addressing racism on both an individual and a systemic basis. It won't be a fast project. It won't be easy, but we are very, very committed to addressing this in the SANCA organization, with justice being our ultimate goal. And at this point, I think I'll turn it over to Manjeet, who is the co-chair of the DEI committee. I think she has some additional thoughts on racism and also wants to talk about the work of the committee itself.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. So before we can really jump into what SANCA can do to be anti-racist, we have to define some key terms here, right? So the term anti-racist was kind of coined by Ibram X. Kendi. He wrote a book, How to Be Anti-Racist. And he states in the book that the opposite of racist isn't not racist, because in not racist, there's this implied neutrality, which is saying that you're not actively opposed to racist structure or racism, right? So by saying you're not racist, what you're doing is you're upholding the status quo there, right? And then in turn, that is favorable to racist structures, right? So the opposite of racist is anti-racist, right? So if we are being anti-racist, then that means that we are actively trying to dismantle the power structures that uphold white supremacy, right? So I'd also like to define what white supremacy means in this context, because I know a lot of times we hear white supremacy and we think like torches, pitchforks, pointy hats, right? But in this context, white supremacy is just talking about the culture of upholding the power structures that empower white folks and people that benefit from white privilege and disenfranchise Black, Indigenous, people of color, right? BIPOC. So for SANCA to be actively anti-racist, we must, one, recognize the role that SANCA has played historically in upholding white supremacy. We need to be transparent about racial inequities within our institution. And we also need to start combating the inherent racism that is in the nonprofit structure.
And that's really challenging work. It's hard work, but I think it's work that we need to do. And so earlier this spring, SANCA formed this DEI team, Manjeet, that you're co-chair of with Tanya. What have you been working on so far?
Before I get into exactly what we've been working on, I just want to first acknowledge that SANCA has taken a very big step in the right direction with forming this team. There's never been a DEI team in the past, and there hasn't really been as much active energy towards, diversity, anti-racism, and that kind of work. So this is like really huge. And so this work isn't about, throwing policies together quickly and haphazardly. We're trying to set forth major institutional change. So this work is going to be long, it's going to be hard, it's going to be continuous, and it's going to be ongoing. So we've gotten a lot of work done in a very short period of time. Some of the big things that we have been working on are hashtag Blackout Tuesdays, which was kind of a continuation of, that Black Square movement. So what we're continuing to do is we are pausing any sort of media that is not about, Black people and amplifying Black voices. And so what we're doing on Tuesdays is we are posting and sharing Black Circus and performing artists from all around the world. Lily B has also started their anti-racist book club. They have an extensive book list of books that they're going to be going through throughout the year. And it's just a great place for people to, one, read and learn how they can be better allies. And then these allies can come together and kind of discuss the things that they have been, reading and learning about, right? Another thing that has not come out yet, but we're very excited about, is what we're calling the Power of Three. So in addition to our hashtag Blackout Tuesday, we're also going to be sharing resources. So there'll be, every Tuesday, there will be 3 resources, which will be like books, podcasts, movies, all types of things, so that people can learn more about how to be better allies to different marginalized communities. And the last thing that I'm really, really excited about, and I want to give a special shout out to Trevor and Jasmine, because they've been working really hard on this, is a land acknowledgement for SANCA. So they are working really hard on acknowledging the fact that SANCA resides on Duwamish land and honoring the land and the space that we are taking up. So those are the things that we've been working on. We have some more things coming down the pipe. Very excited. Cool things will be happening, and I think the community will be excited about the work that we're doing.
That's great. Thank you so much. And I know that work is really important right now for us to dive into, and it's just a precursor of more that we need to do on an institutional level as well. So I want to thank you both for your work on that effort and for being a part of this call. We're going to keep the program moving, but like with Joe, I'd like to invite you to stick around. If we have questions from our audience that's on the call, when we get to the Q&A, we can bring you back up so that you can answer those and address those directly.
Awesome. Thank you, John.
So thank you both, and stick around. So I'm gonna keep us rolling, and I talked a little bit earlier about SANCA's overall situation with COVID. And one thing I want to address is our financial reality, which up to this point, given the PPP loan that we got in the spring and the amazing outpouring of support from many of you and others who were not on this call, who stepped up to support SANCA through the spring, we made it through fairly unscathed. Summer, however, has been a bit of a different picture. As we reopened classes, obviously the demand is not there. Overall, we're probably bringing in about 10% of what we typically see this time of year in earned revenue. So something is going to have to change. We are going to need to either reduce expenses, or this fall, we're going to have to see the demand increase considerably if people are willing to come back and re-engage with Circus again. However, even in the midst of all of that, we are also keeping one eye firmly focused on the future. And we're looking ahead to what needs to happen next when SANCA is able to return to some level of normalcy and vibrancy at the level that we had prior to this pandemic. And so one of the things that's on our topic list we're going to get to right now is about the flying trapeze tent, because we need to address some of our facilities overall. So we're seeking ways to grow and improve our facilities so we can better serve our students as well as our staff and community. I'm going to introduce now to you Katie Wagman, who is co-director of our Flying Trapeze program at SANCA. Hello, Katie. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good.
Awesome.
I'm doing good. You are here. You didn't get the red shirt memo, but I like our contrast.
It's
The
okay.
red and yellow goes well
I
together.
went to Sankathon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. So Katie, I want to ask you just right off the bat, what's the history of the tent and what does it need now in terms of its structure and maintenance?
So the tent predates me at SANCA. It was built in 2009. And since then has been hosting everything from classes to parties to shows to open houses, and has served a vast array of populations, including Joe Montgomery's hemiparesis group. We've hosted an ongoing class with an Orthodox Jewish girls' school, homeless youth groups, families with either a deaf or a blind child. So you name it, we've welcomed pretty much everybody through our doors. And the tent itself was originally purchased from a very big tent company actually in Florida, Big Top Shelters. And the tent has a life expectancy of 5 to 10 years. So having been constructed in 2009, we have now reached a bit of a crossroads. I mean, maintenance projects kind of done thus far over the years by SANCA staff have included like patching, seam repair, power washing, moisture control. Thanks if anybody in this Zoom call was a participant in the fan fundraiser. But we are also lucky enough to be located in an environment that naturally mitigates our UV exposure. So we have that going for us. So the tent has lasted a very long time and has done very well. But like you said, we do want to keep an eye to the future and make sure that we have proper plans in place when we need them. So in addition to replacing the tent skin itself, the structure itself is all sound, but the tent skin will need to be replaced. And we'll also need to add insulation to the interior of the tent to be compliant with city permitting requirements. And so for the price tag of a new PVC vinyl tent skin and the insulation kit comes in just under 60 grand. And that's just for materials. So things for SANCA to keep in mind as we're moving towards the future.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really important. But the question then becomes, so say we do this and,
yes.
and we get this insulation and sort of all the bells and whistles that come with it.
Yeah.
How does that improve the experience for what happens inside the tent for our staff and students?
For those in the Zoom call that have been in the tent through all 4 seasons, you'll be familiar with this. For those that are either new to SANCA or have never spent a lot of time in the tent, we are essentially in an outdoor environment, and we use various cooling methods in the warmer months and various heating methods in the colder months. But still, because we are essentially in a tent and not in an indoor facility, we do have a lot of temperature fluctuation. And so the flyers are a hearty bunch, and we warm up really, really well in the winter, and we stay cool with popsicles and lots of fans in the summer. But having some insulation to kind of regulate that temperature all year round would be like really kind of an incomparable benefit for this facility.
So it's kind of like going from camping to glamping.
If you will. Yes, I like that.
Lovely.
I mean, Circus has a glam part of it, right? So
yeah, absolutely. So I want to switch and just ask you a quick question about this summer. How has the experience been so far with the small classes that you've had and people wearing masks this summer with flying trapeze classes?
So I think for starters, both on the staff side and on the student side, nobody knew what to expect. And what we have found is that both the smaller class size and the shorter classes have been really, really awesome, both for flyers to like get back in shape, both muscles and calluses, And there have actually been a lot of requests from flyers to extend that option, even beyond if and when we open for longer classes or classes with catches. So there's been an ask pretty much across the board that we have at least some of these shorter classes with smaller class sizes as part of our kind of ongoing programming or curriculum. That being said, we've also had like a really cool mix of returning flyers and new flyers. And so it's been like a really nice kind of either introduction back or introduction to SANCA. And I can't really say that everybody's hoping to wear their mask forever. But for the time being, everybody is more than happy to comply with our new safety protocols for as long as they're necessary.
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting to me how we've been forced to do these different things, and yet there have been benefits of it, you know.
Yeah.
Smaller class size, our online classes, even doing an event like this via Zoom
Totally.
kind of makes sense. Rather than making everybody drive through traffic in Seattle, we can engage all of our donors and supporters just from their own homes. So
yeah, loving it.
It's great that you're getting new feedback out there. I'm sorry, what?
I said I love it. SANCA is saving rush hour.
Yeah, right? Getting closer to carbon neutral.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Katie, thank you for being on the call. Please stick around because we're going to jump right into Q&A now. So here's what we're going to do, everybody. Thank you again, Katie.
Yeah.
And to all of the speakers who have come aboard, I'm really appreciative of their time and coming and being a part of this evening with us. So now we're going to kind of shift a little bit and do our best to make this a little bit of a conversation with you all. You all are supporters of the organization. You're obviously very passionate about what SANCA does, so we want to hear from you and take your questions. And you're welcome to ask me any questions about any topic that we've covered tonight or any topic that we have not covered tonight. And then all of our guests are here, and we can just have them turn their video back on and bring them back to the forefront if you have a question for them about any of the topics that we've presented. So I'm going to open things up now, and anybody who has any questions, you can raise your hand, and Jeff and I will get you unmuted so that we can hear your question, or you're welcome to ask a question in chat, and we'll kind of go from there. Does anybody want to step up and ask a question first? And I'm actually going to ask actually all of my speakers. Jeff, can we get their video on and get them unmuted so we can see them? We can have a little bit of a conversation right now. There's Tara. Everybody's populating. And in the meantime, if anybody's formulating questions, please do. I sort of feel like we could have gone on about the DEI conversation quite a bit. And we have a lot of long-term work there that you were pointing to, Tara, for DEI. So I have this question to just kind of dive in for either you or Manjeet. In terms of some of the larger institutional initiatives that you mentioned, Tara, where do you see us starting that particular ball? What's, say, first couple of steps along the way? Oh, you're still muted. Jeff, we'll need you to unmute Tara. Otherwise, I'm the only one talking, and that's not good for this whole conversation.
There we go.
Yay.
I assume you can hear me now. Well, like I said, it's a big, big undertaking. And I think what we need to do as a group with the DEI committee and with the various members of the organization is hold conversations so that we can, number one, determine what the priorities are, what needs to be reviewed and analyzed and evaluated, and then start prioritizing what we need to look at first, where we can have the greatest impact, and assign people to work on those particular tasks. I think it's going to take the entire SANCA organization. Everybody needs to be a player in this. Number one, in deciding what we need to do, what we need to address, what the priorities are, and then making it happen.
And Manjeet, do you want to chime in on that? And Jeff, we need you to unmute.
People
There
should,
we go.
yeah, people should be able to unmute now. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I'm all thrown off with all this unmuting and muting business. The only thing I was just going to say is that, you know, it's got to start from the top down, right? So if we are able to, you know, start to get some diversity on the board, it's already looking like we are, you know, making some improvement in our leadership staff. You know, going to continue to make its way down. So we got to start at the top.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add that it's absolutely crucial that we make sure that DEI is prioritized in our budget. The money has to be there, and that's something that I personally am committed to, because I know that it'll be impossible for us to do this work and do it well if we're not allocating resources. So that's crucial. So we have a supporter with us, John Doty, who is looking a little different than the photos that I've seen of you, but John, feel free to chime in with your question. You're unmuted now.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I've always looked like this.
Well, I'm new to SANCA, so I'm learning.
All right. I have a question. It's about the diversity thing. I mean, how do you have a sense for knowing how you'll be successful? Like, do you know what success looks like? Do you know what you're going to be measuring? And sort of, I guess that's the first level question. You know what you will be measuring for success?
That's such a great question. I kind of have an initial response to that, but I'd love to hear from Manjeet or Tara first.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question that I'll actually bring to the DEI committee this Friday when we all meet, because I know that there are ways to do that, you know, via surveys and things. So I think that is a good way to assess it as an organization and as a community, right? Just to see what people's opinions are. But I think that it's going to be one of those things that is going to feel obvious, right? We're going to see more diverse members on the board. We're going to see more diverse people in leadership, and we're going to have a more representative staff, right? And it's going to, I think it's going to be very evident to the community as we start to, you know, succeed and reach our goals. People are going to see. You're going to notice, John, I promise.
And I'll chime in with a little bit to tag on to that, Manjeet. John, I've asked the DEI team, and well, I mean, actually, they kind of did this on their own initiative first, which was to start to build a plan for SANCA that has specific action steps. And I'm asking them now to sort of flesh out that plan so that we have specific goals, a specific vision for where we want to be, and a timeline for when we're going to get there. So when we get that plan to a place that it's in good shape, we're going to take it forward to the board. It'll be something that staff will have a chance to review. The board will then sign off on it. And when it does, it'll be something that we present to the community. And so we're going to be at that point very transparent, because we're going to say to our supporters, here is our plan, here are our goals, and here are our benchmarks. And you'll be able to monitor along with us, you know, when we get things done and how things shift. We're also going to start producing an annual report at SANCA each year. So we will have an annual report at the end of 2020. That annual report will cover everything. It'll talk about all the classes that we provide and the camps and all the different things. It'll have financial benchmarks, and it'll talk about our vision and goals and how we're, the scholarships we're giving out. Essentially, it'll be a map and a guide to how we are using the resources of our donors and supporters to serve our mission and serve our community well. And DEI will be a central component to that annual report as well. So go ahead, John.
No, that's super great. I'm really happy that SANCA is making this a priority. That's super awesome. I think I might have missed it. When do you think the first, like there will be an annual report at the end of the year? Is that what will have the goals and measurements and so forth in it? Is that when I should expect to see that?
I would say that it's possible that the DEI team will produce a plan that's approved by the board and then published on our website for the community to see prior to that point, and that the annual report will add to that and also give some additional benchmarks. That's the plan right now. Obviously, in the midst of COVID and everything else, we're scrambling, we're adjusting in a lot of different ways. Things can change pretty quickly. So that may slow down some of the efforts. I would say the annual report for sure is when you're going to first see that, but hopefully before then.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. We'll also try to make sure that we're taking care of unicorns, where and when we can. So Joe, I want to invite you to unmute because I want to ask you as well. I think it's really crucial. You mentioned it in some of your response to my initial questions about the DEI team's work, and that you always had this vision of inclusivity and welcoming people, no matter their abilities, no matter their backgrounds. Can you present a little bit in terms of what you see DEI as part of that vision from the very beginning?
Well, certainly we're being inclusive from the beginning, but I don't think either of us had done any true, racial introspection on our own racist bias that we grew up with. And I think it's an old white person's trope to say, well, I'm being nice, isn't that enough? And as we get older, we learn that in fact, no, it's not enough. And to unpack all the unwitting ways that we've been biased. And I think having a formal committee looking at these things with intelligence and education is a wonderful thing.
Right. Yeah, I've definitely had a bit of my own wake up call in seeing the nonprofit structures that I have served over my years and how it has supported, privilege and white privilege over true equity and truly serving everybody in the community. It's been kind of an eye opener to me. So I think from that initial beginning of where SANCA was and that vision, I think that's part of what we're continuing to carry out with this DEI work.
Agreed. Yes.
I really love that John is still with us on screen right now, so everybody can see his lovely mask. Manjeet, I want to just open up the floor. Do you have any sort of final thoughts about us moving forward as a community through this work?
Yeah, I think that as the DEI committee, there's a bunch of extra syllables in there that didn't need to be there. I just think that it's very important for SANCA as an institution to be very transparent, and we also want to be very transparent with our work. So if anyone who is a part of this meeting or part of the SANCA community at large has any sort of questions, they can always feel free to reach out, ask those questions. We can provide minutes from all of our meetings. We want to be very transparent about all of the work that we're doing, and we want to involve the community in that work as well, right? Because it doesn't only just serve us here inside of SANCA, but it should in turn serve the entire, Circus community and the Seattle community. So
That's great. Thank you. Jeff, I want to invite you to unmute and show your video as well, to come back with us, because I think we're getting pretty close to wrapping up here. I just want to say to everybody who's viewing at this point that if you have a question, you have the freedom, you should have the freedom now to be able to unmute yourself. You're welcome to chime in, raise a hand, or ask a question in chat, but we are close to wrapping up unless there are additional questions. Jeff, I just wanted to thank you for hosting us all and keeping everything moving smooth, and also making sure that unicorns are prominent in our video display through much of the event. And you put on this event, you wanted to connect with the supporters. Do you have anything that you would like to add or say to those who are on the call?
I just, again, would really like to say thank you to everybody for being a part of the SANCA community. I'm seeing people on the call who've been with us since the beginning for 16 years, and people who are relatively new to us. And I'm just really happy that you all find joy in Circus. And I personally, and I know that the whole organization is incredibly grateful for all of your support, not only through COVID, but through many, many years as well. So thank you all for sticking with us for so long.
Yes.
So I'm going to add one last bit on a completely different topic for our audience before we sign out, which if you received your newsletter, you've heard this already from SANCA if you've had a chance to read it, but that's that we are going to be announcing our fall session right around the first week of September. We will open enrollment, and fall session will begin September 20th and then run 12 weeks, technically 13 weeks, but Thanksgiving week will be a week off through December 19th. And when we do that, we are going to have online enrollment. By and large, golly gee, we're actually getting into the 21st century. And I know that's something that we had talked about way back in the beginning of 2020, that we were ready to roll with that. And we thought we were. And not that I'm one to want to bring out excuses, but the payment processor, who was part of our online system, stopped accepting new applicants because of COVID. They felt it was too big of a risk because people would pay us large sums of money in advance for a series of classes that would take place over the course of a few months. And they were worried that those classes would get canceled, and organizations like ours, not just us, wouldn't have the chance to pay back during COVID. So they didn't approve a whole slew of applicants during COVID, and that included SANCA. So we could never get our payment processor forward. We actually had to switch now to a new software system, which is why our summer session was not online. But we are now moving into a new software system that will allow us to produce online registration for everybody for fall session and in perpetuity going forward. And pretty confident in this new system that we've put together. It's been vetted and tested, so we're feeling really good about that. So that's a new perk. And in all honesty, we would not have the flexibility to be able to pull off this shift like we are during these times without everybody's support who've been so generous with SANCA. So I'm going to wrap us up. Oh, no, wait, I'm sorry. I see a question in chat. We have a question that asks, at the current quote unquote burn rate, how long can SANCA stay afloat? The answer is based on the way summer session went, if that demand were to stay the same throughout the rest of the year, we would probably make it to about December, and that would be it. And I have no intention of letting us get to that point where SANCA can't stay afloat. We will do everything that we can to cut all necessary expenses. Those may be tough things. We may have to face, a larger scale of cutbacks in staff, possibly in terms of facility. I don't know, but we will cut every possible expense to help us stay afloat and go beyond that point of December. We have no intention of getting to a point where we can't keep going or we can't pause and return at some point. So I want to assure everybody of that. While there's a lot of uncertainty about when we can get back to full mast, when we can, not only in terms of the COVID regulations, but when also people will be fully comfortable coming back to the gym when we get that earned revenue starting to roll in again. We don't know when that'll be, but we know that we can be fluid and responsive. So fall session is really going to be a big test for us when we get to that first week of September and we open enrollment, seeing how people sign up and how many people are ready to return to Circus in the fall. Now that the summer, once the summer weather starts to die down and they realize that working out indoors is what they will want to do again. If we don't get that same response, if we don't get the kind of response that that we hope we can, even on a very conservative level, we're going to start having to make some changes. If we did nothing right now, we would make it through to the end of the year either way, but then we would be in question going forward. So changes will have to be made one way or another. It'll either be on the demand and income side or it'll be on the expense side. John Cornicello, photographer extraordinaire. I see that you have brought your video up. First of all, before you even say anything, I just want to thank you for your phenomenal photographs. I love your mask series on Facebook, which includes a lot of SANCA people, and your photos of our classes in action with people wearing masks and our cleaning stuff. All of that is great. We're still going through all these photos to be able to pull more out and show them every day. So first of all, thank you.
You're welcome. Happy to help.
So you popped up your video. Do you have a question for us?
Yeah, just wanted to say hi.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, I was getting messages, people saying hi, so I figured I'd make myself seen.
That's great. That's great. So are you getting a lot of people who are stepping up and want to come do mask portraits with you? Is that an ongoing thing?
I've done 55, I think, so far.
Wow.
So,
and are you getting more people coming in, more requests?
Yep. Yeah, it's all doing well.
What's your favorite image of that mask series? Who did the most creative and fun thing?
I have no idea yet.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, each day is so different. I mean, I had a belly dancer yesterday. I had someone with a pandemic death mask, but in florals a few weeks ago. It's a lot of different things. Manjeet came in and did a really great session in 4 minutes.
That photo from Manjeet was incredible.
Yeah.
I can't believe you did that in 4 minutes.
Yep.
Can we get John Doty, our resident unicorn, in with a mask?
Of course.
For a portrait? Okay, good.
Of course. I'm in Wallingford.
All right.
Great.
Well, I want to thank, oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something else, John?
No, just thank you all for being there. Thanks for SANCA.
You bet. It's an absolute pleasure for all of us. So thank you everyone for being a part of this call. We really appreciate you joining us tonight and sort of opening up your living rooms to us. And I want to thank all of our speakers. You all have been phenomenal. Does anybody have any last words? Well, you beautiful people. Go ahead, Jeff. What was that?
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Lots of
Thank
great
you all.
work done.
Have a beautiful night. And thank you for being a part of the SANCA community. You mean the world to us. Good night.
Night.
So Jeff, you'll see an option down at the bottom that says more. If you click on that, you should be able to stop the streaming.